This week we'll be talking about AI art in board games. Stick around.
You're listening to the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about how we game.
That's right, I'm Mitchell.
And I'm Wayne.
And this is the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about
how we game.
Wayne, I know you had a very busy weekend. I'm jealous. Necronomicon, right? How'd it go?
Good. 42nd year of Necronomicon. Think about that.
That's a long time.
It's a long time, yeah. I mean, it's not necessarily, it's not 47 years of gaming or 42 years of gaming, excuse me, but it's like a science fiction, horror. They have like the movie festival. They have it's a lot of authors and book stuff, and they always have a game room. And they had whole room for Blood on the Clock Tower, and they had like LARPing and things like that, but I basically just gamed all weekend.
Nice,
so, yeah,
nice.
It was good. It was a lot of my friends, maybe friends that aren't Beans and Dice crew friends, but just friends I've been gaming with for a long time, and with COVID, and then just with family, and I have some friends that also care for some elderly parents, and so I got to see some guys that I probably have maybe seen once in the last year, one guy I haven't seen for 3 years, and that stuff. So. It was nice. It was a really good time to hang out and catch up with people that you maybe you're gamed with a lot back in the day, but haven't been around a lot in the last couple of years. So, it got to the point of the night where we kind of put away the heavier, thinkier games and ended up with a lot of the fast group games, not like party games, but like the Medicis and the Bonanzas and things like that, where you can play like 6-7 people. But it's games that we played a ton that we can do while we're chatting and catching up. So it was really good. It was good, and then. Got promises from a lot of them that this is now we're gonna join you every year. We're back. We're gonna do it so that it'll be a big thing. So yeah.
Any standout games for you?
Yeah, there's a couple here and there. I mean, I played almost 30 different games during the course of the weekend. A lot of older games, a lot of newer games. I think the one that I would talk about is Cosmoctopus. It's probably the newest.
BJ streamed this just the other day.
Did he? Okay,
he was raving about it.
Yeah, it was really good. That's probably the newest game I played. Over the weekend. It's from Henry Audubon. It's the designer, same one as Parks. So if you like Parks, you'll probably like this game. There's a lot of similar mechanics and mechanisms kind of in it. You've played Parks, I assume, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and Parks and those out there in Parks is a game where you're kind of moving your guys through the national parks or a park, and you're collecting resources, and then at certain points you can use those resources to buy the things, the adventures or the parks or the strat, whatever it is, and those are victory points. And you get, at the end, you do that 3 or 4 times, and that's the victory points. So in Cosmoctopus, you're like trying to help summon the great devourer of Cosmoctopus and bring him into the universe to.
It's basically Cthulhu, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a play on Cthulhu, obviously. And the goal is to get to 8 tentacles, and then once you get to 8 of his tentacles into the universe, he kind of rips in, and you win the game by destroying the universe. But you're moving him around. You're moving.
These components look pretty cool. I'm looking at it on BGG.
Yeah, it's very fun. All nice components. It's nice wood components, thick cardboard, and the little Cosmoctopus thing. And your score track is kind of like the universe ripping apart, and as you get the tentacles, you place them around it, and then when you win, you grab the Cosmoctopus head and put him in the center, and it kind of makes a little thing. But anyway, you're moving him around the board and collecting resources and/or using the resources to buy cards, and on the cards there are discounts in buying other cards. There are effects and spells or different things you can do to collect and open up paths to bring a tentacle into the universe or whatever. So it's a fairly straightforward game. It's maybe weight of 2-ish, and actually I'm looking right now on BGG 2.17, so I was right on there. About an hour. Plays 1 to 4. So it's a lightish game. It's a fun game if you kind of like the trying to string cards together to get discounts and use the resources to buy additional cards and use those to then summon the tentacles and then you win. So it was a kind of just a fun little game, right? It wasn't anything spectacular. It's not blowing my socks off. I didn't go right out and buy it, but it was a game that I enjoyed a lot, and it had a lot of similarities in the feel of the mechanics. Totally different theme, obviously, to his other game, Parks. So if you're a fan of Parks or that type of game where you're venturing your guy or moving your guy along a board and using the spots you go to collect resources and use those resources to buy cards. It's a pretty straightforward game for you. So I enjoyed that a lot. We played a ton of other games. The only one I would talk about is, Flamecraft. I actually played it twice this weekend. Once because I had gotten there early and there was no one really out playing games, and that was the first one someone set up. And then the person was playing again And some of my friends were in between games, so I said, I'll just sit down and play this game really quick, and I enjoyed it, but I don't like the way the game ends at all. Like the whoever triggers the end game, everyone else gets another turn basically, including that person, so they get a second turn after
rewarding
the game
you for getting to the end game trigger.
I guess, yeah. I don't know. I'm not a fan of that. I'm a fan of even turns in game, but I enjoyed the game. I'm glad I didn't Kickstarter it though. Like it's not, I remember when it was on Kickstarter and I was like, I want to get this game because I think it'd be fun for my kid and I to play. I just don't enjoy it as much, and I don't think it's cute and all, but I don't know if it has that constant replayability. Well,
it's had a lot of success, and I think they just announced another game in that same universe.
Yeah,
right?
Well, they didn't announce it. It kind of got like
it kind of slipped out, got leaked.
Slipped out, yeah, it got leaked. That the guy working on it was on a podcast talking about games and kind of it's a fun game, right? But it's I think I haven't played it yet. I've watched playthroughs of it, and I think I'll enjoy Creature Comforts more than Flamecraft, which I'm glad I picked up Creature Comforts when they had another Kickstarter aspect to it.
I think I like Flamecraft more than Creature Comforts, but it's been a while since I played Creature Comforts.
Yeah. They're both solid games. I'm not saying Flamecraft's a bad game. I'm glad I didn't pay the full bust out Kickstarter price for it. Like I might pick up if there's a retail copy of it, I might do it. I don't know if I need all the fancy dragons and stuff.
What is it? Is it just the resources that are upgraded in the Kickstarter version?
It's just you get the playmat maybe, and you get like the fancy the big plastic dragons or whatever.
Right?
Yeah, whatever. But and maybe there's some screen printing and stuff.
Yeah. For me, I'm gonna kind of be getting almost a little bit into our topic, but not on purpose. The game I played recently that I wanted to talk about is Terraforming Mars, the dice game. And actually, I don't know if people listening remember from last week, I said there are two new hot games that I played that I really want to talk about both of them, but I decided on Three Ring Circus last week, and I saved Terraforming Mars, the dice game, for this week. And in the past week, it's been in the news a lot because of the AI art, and so I won't talk about that just yet because that's our main topic. I do want to talk about the game itself, though. I'm a huge fan of Terraforming Mars. I have all the expansions. That used to be one of my lifestyle games, to the point I've talked about it on the podcast before. It currently resides in an Amazon box because I had all the Broken Token, all the expansions in one box, and it was constantly traveling with me to friends' houses. And one time it just fell out of the car and exploded. So anyway, I love Terraforming Mars to death. Whenever Ares Expedition came out, I didn't want to try it because I was like, you're taking something that's already good, and why make a new version, and why make it stripped down? And whenever I finally played Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, I enjoyed it. It was a very different game. It was basically like a Roll for the Galaxy kind of thing.
Yeah, like was it Puerto Rico or Eminent
Domain?
Right.
Like action selection, and other people follow essentially based on what you choose, or do the same action. And so whenever the dice game came out, I was excited about it because, hey, I liked what they did with Ares Expedition, so maybe I'll like this as well. I did like it. I enjoyed it. And what I'm realizing Terraforming Mars is doing really well that I feel like a lot of other games have not done is they're keeping the same je ne sais quoi of the game, like not just the theme, but the basic ideas of the terraforming. But with different types of mechanics. So, it's at its heart, it's still a tableau builder, right? Yeah. And the map has kind of become more secondary in these later iterations. But the first time, a true engine builder, the second one, that action selection, and this one now a dice game. And I liked it a lot. The Dice Tower wasn't so hot. I don't think they gave it like 6s and 7s.
I was just going to say, like, I just watched the weekend review today, and Joey Evans and Chris E both kind of like gave it like a 6 or a 5 and a 6, and they were kind of like, eh.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you are higher on it than they are.
So what I like about it is that you're building this engine to get dice, right? And then on your turn, you can, I don't remember the exact wording, but you're basically doing like a minor action and a major action. And you roll a die and you never roll it again. And so some of the stuff they didn't like about like, okay, well, if you just get a good roll, then you're better off than me. And I think it was Roy who liked it the most. It was like, well, then you just got to tailor your strategy to that, right? So the cards have costs, and there's, I don't know how many different colored dice, but there's a common, like a medium, and then a rare of each side. So it's 3, 2, 1 on the sides. It's a D6.
So you roll the dice once the entire game?
Yeah, but your dice are like your resources. So whenever you get it the first time, you roll it.
Okay, so you're gaining more. So it's not like, I'm like, how is it a dice game?
Right. But there, I would say one of the main mechanics of the game is that you can manipulate the dice and move them to a different side. So it's like, if you get it on the first roll, you're lucky. But if not, you can still change it around. And so you use those faces to pay for cards, which of course they can give you one-time effects, they can give you ongoing effects, or they can give you production. And you can kind of like skip a turn to take a production turn to get like all your income, kind of like on a tapestry kind of thing. But also, like I said, you can discard dice to move it to what side you need, because if you have a certain number of different symbols, you can do like those standard projects in Terraforming Mars and put a city down or put a green tile down, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know, it just really jived for me. Speaking of something we talked about a couple weeks ago, I did happen to win handily, and maybe that influenced it a little bit. I want to get another play of it in. It was a lot faster than a game of Terraforming Mars, even faster than Ares Expedition, which is saying something, but I still got that feel. So I would definitely recommend it. I had one friend who was learning it, and he had never played Terraforming Mars before, and he enjoyed it. And so I'm really interested to see his take on the other games, kind of going backwards. It's a weird experiment.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody at the table really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it. It's a buy for me. We'll talk more about, the morality of the art and all that a little bit later, but mechanically, it's solid, I think.
Yeah, and I think Cosmoctopus, I would say, is a try, unless you like Parks so much that you want a Cthulhu-themed version of it. But I think that for me, I never got into the dice game versions of things. Like, I've just never done it.
Me neither. Usually not.
I can't think of a dice game version that I like more than the regular, to the point where I've bought it. I don't own any dice games. Like of a dice game version of an original game.
Yeah, there's like Rajas, the dice charmers. There's Rolling Realms is basically a dice game version of everything.
Oh, that's kind of like a separate roll and write.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But I think there's like Sushi Roll, and then there's like there's Catan dice, and I don't know.
I saw that at the store the other day. I don't know how that works.
It's kind of like a travel version. But yeah, so it'd be interesting. I mean, for me, it's definitely a try, because I don't even own Terraforming Mars because there's just too much to buy at this point. Like, I don't even want to get into that. Like, I do own the base Ares Expedition that I bought like half price at Target because
it was super cheap, right?
Super cheap. But now I feel like I need to get some of the expansions for that, because I think like at least one of the expansions kind of gives a little bit of a prelude or a little bit more into it or something. But yeah, probably not, because I've only played it a couple of times. But interesting. It's kind of interesting to hear that the Dice Tower was down on it, but you liked it more. Where would you, so if on their scale of like the 1 to 10, if they were a 5 or a 6, are you like a 7 or are you like a 9?
Like an 8, maybe.
Yeah? Okay.
I'm not going to say it was the best game ever, but for someone who liked Terraforming Mars, I felt like it was a nice homage to that game with a different primary mechanic.
And faster, I guess. So that might be a fit.
Yeah. So. And of course, as always, my Terraforming Mars games don't last as long as the Tampa people's Terraforming Mars games. Yeah. But even so, it was much faster.
Yeah. All right. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
So that...
Yeah, go ahead. Now, real quick, I mean, this is a tangential thing. I know last week we had a segment where we were talking about like what you've been watching and what you've been doing. Were you? I can't remember last week. Were you the one that said only murders in the building? Did you recommend that, or is that somebody else that recommended that to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like on the last episode of the first season, and I just started watching it today.
I thought you were about to say the last episode in season 3. I was like, dang.
No. I just binged like the whole first season today while I was working. I'm like,
you're enjoying it?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm like cackling. Like, my wife was working from home today too, and she's sitting next to me, and I have a headset on. She has a headset on. She's listening to something like YouTube or whatever. Like every couple of minutes, I'm just like chuckling, and she's like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, it's just kind of funny." Like, it's not as funny as I thought it would be, but it's entertaining, and like
it's got its moments.
It's got its moments. It's got this good like one-liners here and there, and then it just has that humor where it's like the older generation, the boomers versus the millennials and the Gen Zers. And I
kind of don't even think of it as a comedy. I think of it as a murder mystery that has comedic elements.
Right. Yep,
I don't go in expecting to laugh my head off the whole time. I'm just intrigued by the story.
Yeah, it is. It is a good story. I like it. I love. Nathan Lane's character is hilarious. I love just his depiction of it. It's good. It's really good. I'm enjoying it. I know. I was like shocked that there was 3 seasons already. I'm like, oh, great, cool. Because I was like, oh man, it sucks. I thought it just came out. So it's good that it's already on its 3rd season. So the
3rd season's like maybe wrapping up in a couple weeks now. I don't remember exactly how many episodes we have left. Yeah. But no One Piece. You didn't get a chance to check that out, the live action at all?
No, not yet. I haven't done that yet. We did. I did. The other thing to watch that I would just talk about for a hot second, because I know I like the segment, is This weekend we took our son to a Fathom event, which I don't know if you know what Fathom events are.
No.
So Fathom Events is like a company that will run movies and other events in movie theaters. And they kind of specialize in showing older movies and things like that. So like you can look up your local AMC theater will have Fathom events all the time. It's usually like Sunday afternoon or like a Wednesday night or whatever, and they'll show Raiders of the Lost Ark or Star Trek, Wrath of Khan.
We have stuff like that around here. It's just not called that. But,
yeah, well, if you look at Fathom Events is like nationwide. It's like all over the place. So you probably have some. I'm sure what theaters around there has it, but they have a Studio Ghibli like marathon this month, and so we took our kid to see Howl's Moving Castle on the big screen, and so he was like, "Oh my god, that's kind of cool!" And now he wants to see Princess Mononoke and all the other ones and things like that. So it's kind of cool. And I love seeing that because I love old movies and things like that, or you can go see live plays or operas and things like that. So if you've never, I know a lot of people when they sit in movie theaters, especially in the Tampa area, you'll hear Fathom events and you see it running. It's actually pretty cool. I mean, I've gone and seen old movies, and there's a very historic theater here called the Tampa Theater that has it. And like at Christmas time, you can go see like, It's a Christmas Carol or, It's a Wonderful Life and those kind of things. And seeing those movies on the big screen in the movie theater is just something that's kind of a little special.
Yeah, that is cool.
Instead of just sitting at home watching it. So
while we're on this kind of improvised geeky goodness segment, another show I'll plug. I guess this isn't technically geeky, but it's a show I discovered during the pandemic, and I'm going to pitch it, and it sounds so not funny, but it is. So it's one of those classic British panel shows. It's called Taskmaster. Have you heard of this?
No, I have not.
So basically, they get 5 comedians, and they just give them random tasks to do. And it's a competition. Fast this, who does this, or the best this. And then for the show itself, they're playing the clips back, and they're commenting on it. And like, there's a judge called the Taskmaster who's like scoring them. And it's just like, because it's comedians, doing this, it's just freaking hilarious. There's like 16 seasons. The 16th season is airing right now. And then they have international versions. They have Australia, New Zealand. They actually had an American one that wasn't good. And they have a bunch of non-English speaking ones too that I haven't watched. But they're all on YouTube. I would highly recommend them. They have some of them broken up into clips, so you can kind of just like get a little taste to see if you enjoy it before you watch full episodes. But that's something I'd recommend as well if you want a good laugh.
Nice. Cool. I appreciate it. That's cool.
So do you have a rant this week?
I don't. I'm happy this week, man. I don't really have a rant. I'm good.
Okay. No Wayne's grumpy corner.
No
this
grumpy
time.
corner. No, I was good.
We'll save that for next time.
Got to go to a con. Got to hang out with friends that I haven't seen in a long time. Played a ton of games. Got to see a movie in the theater with my kid, and so yeah, it's been great. I really have no rant. Although, it's funny is that Carlos and some of the other people have commented on the rant part, and they're like, "Yeah, well, that's a great part. We got to do that more often." I'm like, I don't know about that.
You got to think about things to be mad about, Wayne. The people demand it.
What grinds my gears?
Exactly.
I can't do it. Even the 50 million people dropping Ticket to the Ride legacy videos today did not bother me because I don't know if I'm quite interested. It's not getting me yet. I'm not.
And we know what the weight of Ticket to Ride is, right?
Yeah, we do.
I know you said you wanted to talk for a second about the World Series of board gaming.
Oh yeah, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, this World Series of board game, but it's certainly growing. Or it seems to be. I don't know if it's the zeitgeist of all the podcasts and the content creators that I watch, but it's like everyone's there, everyone's covering it, and the Dice Tower is like all in on it. Bonacore is now an investor in it, so it's like at least they think it's taken off. But I don't know. Did you watch last night's Azul final table?
I haven't been following it this year. I followed it a little bit last year.
Yeah, it's way really bigger this year. It's way bigger this year. There's like a couple thousand people there now, and they have outer tournaments and inner tournaments. They are running this like the World Series of Poker. I don't know if you ever got into that and watched that back in the day. But they are running it exactly like that, where they have outer tournaments, inner tournaments. They have the buy-in, not the buy-ins, but the work your way ups, and they have the rings. And so it's just they're full in, just recreating the World Series of Poker in board games. And like last night, they were streaming the Azul finals on the Dice Tower, and they're doing that every night. Like this week, they're streaming the finals. But so they had like a top-down view of the table with cameras of the 4 players in the corner. And like watching them play, and it was
it's Azul.
And it's Azul.
Right? Yeah.
And Z and Camilla are doing like commentary where like Z's like all like golf voice. He's like, so it looks like leader is gonna take the stack of red there and put them in the 4th column, or he could take the blue and put it in the 1. And Camilla's like, yeah, it'd be great, and you could see them doing the math, and it was like they were commentating like
It's
they
like a
were
parody.
It kind of feels like oh my god, the guy who does all the David Guest movies where it's like, you know, Best in Show and have you ever seen anyway, or like Spinal Tap, you know, like that stuff.
Yeah,
it almost seemed like a parody of the World Series of Poker.
That's funny.
But they were actually really good. I gotta admit, like I turned it on just because I was like watching other stuff and I was like working and playing board games and stuff on BGA and stuff, and I'm watching and I'm listening to them like, they're actually really good at this. Like, so, like it's not like I'm surprised by it, I guess, but like they played really well with each other, and it was like very like, you know, dodgeball, the Ocho. You know,
yeah.
You know, I would be interested to see what the thought are of other people in the Beans and Dice community, other people that listen to this podcast. Like, what do you think of this? Like,
I think it's really freaking cool.
World Series of Board Games.
I thought about trying to go this year, but I chickened out. I mean, like, there's so many people competing. It would just be like, you know,
hard to, but if you make that final table, it's like $5,000 for just making the final. Like, you won the guy who won the world the Azul tournament, which his last name was Leader, and I think it might have been the guy who runs Leader Games. I think it might have been.
Interesting.
Is it Chris Leader? Is that the guy? I don't know. I have to look him up. But anyway, and so it's $5,000 for winning that. Plus you get the ring, and then I mean, it's pretty cool. But yeah, it does seem low. Like, the World Series of Poker costs money to get into, but you can often win free entries. You know, and I know that they were giving discounts and there were ways to get kind of free entries into various things, but it does seem like a little bit of like, you know, the people that are there are people who can afford to be there, and there's probably other gamers around the world that are like 10 times better than them. You know, there's probably that you know, poor guy who's kind of poor and he just has a few games here and there and goes to his, you know, game store for game days and would crush everybody. But and Carlos posted that the guy who won the TM Terraforming Mars,
he won it last year. That's very
won it
interesting.
again this year too. So, I mean,
I've never felt like Terraforming Mars was luck based. I'm okay with this evidence.
Yeah, you're okay with that evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, but what's interesting is like, so I was at 32 different games or something like that, or 16 different games, and if you win one, you go to the next round, and you got to play in a different game, and then so in order to win the title of the, you know, the number one, you got to win like 3 tournaments in a row in 3 different games, and the games go from like Azul to Brass. You know?
Yeah, and I think you get to pick what your first game is. And
then after that, it's randomized or something. So yeah, I mean, I think it's
so you really have to be ready to play all those games. I think it's like 32 possible games,
something like that, 16 or 32, some you know, multiplication of that. But I think it's pretty interesting. I'll be interested to see if it grows and how they afford it all. Like, so, you know, if they have 16 different games played, or 30, it can't be 32, maybe it's 16 different games. Probably 16 different games in the meter. Okay. That's $5,000 per table, plus a $25,000 final prize, plus the rings. You know, that's a pretty decent chunk of money.
I'm sure they have some pretty big sponsors, and
I'm sure
you have to buy into the tournament.
Yeah, and then like you see like a Stephen Bonacore, he dropped that he's in it now. Like last year, he was like a guest of honor, and now he's an investor and he's on the board. So. I mean, this is a guy.
Good,
I mean,
good sign. I think
it is. I mean, here's a guy who worked in Wall Street. He was an IT guy for the big, you know, I don't know whether it was Goldman or Lehman or one of those guys, but he was on that for a lot of time. Retired from there, then owned Stronghold Games. Yeah. Sold Stronghold up into a bigger company. Retired from that. Now he's, you know, so he's a guy that has investment acumen. So, you know, if he's investing in it, you know, it's probably a pretty good investment and it's a money making prospect. But I could see it. I'd be interested to see what happens over the next 5 years. You know, does it grow from 2,000 people to 4,000 to 5? Like, how big could it be? Because I mean, remember when the World Series of Poker first started getting its publicity, it was only like 1,000 players, and now, good Lord, there's like 10,000 that show up for that thing, and it's like all week. So I'd be interested to see how big it grows.
Yeah,
so, but yeah, cool. I want to. You got to go watch the video of the Azul one, just to, even if you watch like 10 minutes of their commentary. And you gotta report back like what you thought of Z and Camilla's commentary.
I'll do that.
It was pretty damn good.
I saw you had
actually
posted, I think, in the Discord.
Yeah, I did. And I think I Facebook messaged it to you. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
while we're talking about Stronghold Games, we'll use a nice little segue into Terraforming Mars Dice. So another thing that's kind of taken the board game world by storm in the last week is the use of AI art in the cards for Terraforming Mars. Now, I'm a person who doesn't care that much about art, and so
says the theater guy who cares about.
No, I mean visual art.
Okay.
So the textbook pictures in Terraforming Mars never did bother me, but you know, this is another level where, you know, AR art is being used. And I'll be honest, I'll give you kind of like my initial thoughts to this and how they've changed kind of over the course of this discussion. So I'll be upfront and honest and say, whenever I hear people getting wrought up about AI art, I usually kind of bristle at that because two things. One, currently at least, AI art is usually not quite right.
Yeah.
Like
There's
it's
something
like
wrong with it. There's an extra thumb
it's
or
creepy. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the opening theme for what was it? Secret Invasion. That weird kind of thing. So there's that. And two, again, initial thoughts. I was like, why does it matter? They're saving money, but it might make the board game cheaper, that kind of thing. I will say I am reformed. I have thought this over and done a little bit of research and realized why that may not have been correct. But that was my initial thoughts on this. What about you? Whenever you first heard about all this going on?
So what's interesting is that, and we stole the conversation actually for tonight for this podcast from the Discord because it was
from
actually
Kyle, right? I think
from Kyle
and
a few other folks were popping off on it today in the last few days, and people were talking about it. And I got a little bit, and I said, this is probably, you said this would be a good topic. I'm like, yeah, let's talk about it because hopefully it strings people to go back to Discord and let's talk about it more. But so I've been dealing with AI for a while now, for over a year, just as a college administrator, right? So I messaged Discord today. It's like, when ChatGPT first came out and Google Bard and some of these other ones, you immediately saw students using it to write papers, like instantaneously. And we have software that looks for, and so, to understand what generative AI art is it's not creating anything new. It's literally scouring the internet for, you tell it, write me a paper in the style of Ralph Waldo Emerson or Tolkien or whatever. And it basically goes out and looks at everything Tolkien ever written and it amalgamates that into its own sort of essay or whatever. And same thing with AI art. It looks at thousands or millions of pictures, and then if you tell it to give me a picture of a monkey, dancing with blue pants on, it'll do what it thinks, in the style of Picasso, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
It'll try its best to amalgamate that, and so it's not coming up with anything new. It's just taking things out there and reorganizing it in different ways. And so that's why, the AI, that's why the cheating software picks up on it fairly easily, or not fairly easy, but pretty well, is it takes written work and it just puts it in there. So it knows sentences and it goes, okay, this sentence is the same exact sentence that's in this book from 30 years ago about, Civil War or whatever. And that's the same thing with AI art. And so I have no problem with that, and it's a great tool. And like Microsoft has their own Microsoft Copilot, which is coming out later this year, which is going to basically just eliminate anybody who uses Excel to create pivot charts and tables and all this other stuff. But anyway, a little tangential there. But so I don't have a problem with AI art. I don't have a problem with AI writing. I don't have I've used ChatGPT to write memos and emails and things already. My problem is not giving the source material its due, right? The credit, and I think that's where even the Writers Guild strike and the actors strike in Hollywood is a large portion about is it's about the streaming rights and streaming royalties and how they get screwed out of royalties when things go to streaming because CBS sells it to its own affiliate, which sells it back to Paramount, and so anyways, long story short, there too, but. My only problem is people aren't getting profit, or they're not getting royalties off of their own intellectual property, right? And we've already seen a bunch of authors are now suing ChatGPT. I don't know if you saw that, but like a lot of big name authors are turning around and suing ChatGPT and other chat and iterative AIs and saying, you let your AI look at our work and now it's reproducing our work or it's reproducing our words in various orders and it's a copyright infringement, or they're suing on that, right? And so I think there needs to be some legislation or some ground rules on that. And if I have, if you're an artist and I've painted, whether I did it on a canvas or whether I used software to paint, which is great, it's still your creativity has gone into that work. And if an AI is using that as inspiration to create something, then there should be some sort of, recourse to the artist in some way. I'm a big proponent of the artist, the people who are creative in this world, because I'm certainly not one of them, should get paid for their work, right? And that's my biggest problem is so many artists, throughout history, not just recent. This has been, think of Laurel and Hardy and the Three Stooges. Those guys didn't get any money off of their stuff. Look at the guys who created Superman. Initially they got none of the money for the creation of Superman and Batman. Schuster and something. So there's a long history of artists kind of being screwed out of their their just due, right, for the work that they produce. And so AI is just another way for corporations, businesses, or other people to make money off of artistic people's work. And so I have a problem with that.
I definitely want. I'm going to comment in a second on credit where credit is due, but I want to loop back around before we get too far from it. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned education, so I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate here. I want to look at both sides. So I'm a teacher. Nowadays, I teach theater, and so my job's a little bit different. But back whenever I used to teach social studies, whenever I first started teaching, I really struggled because there's been a shift in education. So whenever you and I were in school, things were a lot different. The internet was not literally at our fingertips.
Yeah, had to get an encyclopedia.
Yeah, exactly. So our education, or at least mine was, I assume yours is the same, was more about getting stuff into your brain, right? And as great as that is, what I was constantly told in my earlier days of teaching is, these kids, yes, it'd be great for them to have that knowledge innately in their brain, but that's not what's as important today, because they could just look up facts, right?
Yeah.
They need to know how to use that. And so I had to make a shift from what I experienced in education to now as a teacher to, yes, we're going to talk about facts, but it's also practice-based, performance-based. What can you do with this information, right?
Yeah.
And, at first, I'm sure whenever, we were younger and the internet and computers were a new thing, there were people saying the same stuff people are now saying about AI,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And now
course.
the internet is just commonplace and no one takes issue with it, right? So I think with AI, that's going to have to change. So with that perspective, I think education is going to have to change. And again, if an AI can do it for you, then, and albeit not always perfectly, but if an AI can do it for you, then our education needs to be about, how to use it wisely or things like that,
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I'm sorry sorry for interrupting, but there's one I'll make a point to that makes sense, because I'm friends with one of the history professors here at the college I work at, and he actually talked about how he's doing that. And so week one, this summer term and now this fall, he started a new thing where the first day he talks about ChatGPT and Google Bard and AI. And he says, don't ask it to write you the essay. Ask it to provide you with the facts of whatever topic you're writing on and give me some interpretations of those facts. Like, what was this battle? What was the outcome of the Battle of Waterloo? Give me facts about it, and then use those, because it'll give it to you faster than you having to go do the research or you go having to read 50 million things. But then I want you to make sure you write your own words, how you interpret what, so he's like using the AI tools in telling students, you can use ChatGPT, but here's how you should use it, and then go write your own, take what they wrote and then write your own based on that, because it's helping you do the research faster. So you're 100% right. It's already being used, and it's how it's being used that's most important, right?
Right. So I don't want to get into too specific of this because I don't want to call anyone out, but I'll just say recently in my life, outside of my job, there has been an instance where AI was used to generate communication in a way that was not made explicitly clear. And what I thought at first was something impressive that was being told to me, I later found out it was AI generated, and I did feel duped. Yeah. I thought I was talking to this person. And that's as specific as I'll go, because I don't want to call anybody out if they happen to be listening. But I started thinking about this from my perspective so I'm not a visual artist, but I am a theater teacher. I do theater in my spare time. To kind of get some perspective, right? So first of all, one of the first things I did with ChatGPT whenever, it was announced, whenever it was, the things I'm interested in, write a song about this or write a play about this. And it doesn't measure up at all to, real songs generated by humans and stuff like that. However, if I was in a position where basically robots were posing as thespians performing on stage, yes, I would bristle at that. If they're getting those opportunities that I would want to have, yes, I would take issue with that.
Because it even goes so far as like look at like Disney and things like that. Like the James Earl Jones did it on his own volition, but he basically gave Disney his voice sample and said,
right.
Here you go. I'm an old guy. I maybe got another 10 or 15 years on this planet, but you can have my voice to use for Star Wars, Vader, whatever, for eternity. But that's also a big sticking point with whole like the companies wanted people's voice samples. And then we own your voice, and then later on we could just use it. And it's like no. If you want my voice sample to then generate or de-age or up-mage me or use me at a later time, then you got to pay me every time you use the voice. And that's the whole thing about like where does that line kind of cross of payment and things like that. But yeah, sorry, good.
No, it's fine. I'm almost. Yeah. I know it's a long-winded point, but I'm almost there.
Yeah.
So I started thinking about real life examples because obviously we're not at a point where we have robots and go and perform for you on stage. However, there are services that you can pay for in the theater world where basically if you're doing a musical to a pre-recorded track, they send you the music and you can choose to have like all the background harmonies and stuff already on it.
Right.
So whenever you go and perform, you're singing the lead vocals and then your chorus comes on to sing. They sound freaking amazing because they were recorded by literally professional singers like in New York, and you're just playing it back.
Right.
And I've been in a performance before where that was happening, and everybody around is so astounded, like, oh my God, their harmonies sound awesome. And I'm like, you realize, like, that's not them, right? It was children.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you're being upfront about that, maybe that's one thing. But that definitely felt like it was cheating because I'm going to see live performance. So I think that's about the closest comparison I can make.
But at least the singers on those tracks are probably getting paid royalties by the company that sold those tracks. Because I know how that works in the theater world too. I mean, there's royalties like crazy. But I think that speaks to like, damn, I had a thought there. I was gonna say like this is like such a heady topic. But I think you know. Writing and stuff like that is also, I think, art is a unique thing, right? And so, but speaking of Terraforming Mars, real quick, like one, it's not like Terraforming Mars had really good art to begin with, right? It's not like they went out and played the Meat Show or like Mr. Covington or any of the big board game art people to do art for Terraforming Mars. They literally just bought clip art, right? I mean, they just they even said like most of the art in the original Terraforming Mars was literally just stock photos and stock art that they were buying from a company anyway, which had long since paid for that art. And so it's not like in this instance, the AI art is replacing a paid artist who was making money. It's not like they had a paid artist who was doing all the art for Terraforming Mars, and then they all of a sudden turned around and said, well, we're going to use AI art now, so you're fired, right?
But at the same time, this is a big company. Like, if anything, this should be used by the up-and-comers. So they can pay artists. They have the money.
Yeah. Here's the thing, though, is Terraforming Mars is not Stronghold Games.
Frixelius.
It's Frixelius Games, which is basically just the family Frixelius. I was reading about it. It's really like the dad and a couple brothers, right? Or 6 or 7 in the family. So they're not a big company.
But Stronghold is paying for the production. I mean, they're just designing the game.
Well, they design it, and I think they're designing it, but I think they produce the game in Europe and other places.
Oh, okay.
And
so Stronghold's just a distributor, like in America?
Distributor in the United States, I think.
Okay.
And so, or something like that. I could be wrong there, so BJ probably would correct me on that, I'm sure. But I think that's the case. I think Stronghold is the main producer in like North America, South America, and some other places, and then there's Frix Games, which does it like in Europe. I mean, so not the hugest company, but even then, most of these companies aren't that big anyway, right? I mean, even the biggest board game company pales in comparison to any other.
Yeah. But whenever I say big, I mean successful.
Yeah, successful.
Even if it's not Stronghold as a whole, Terraforming Mars has been very successful.
Very successful, yes. And I think one I would say kudos to. I don't like to say this very much, but kudos to Kickstarter for saying and they having a policy. This is a thing because they had to come out and say on their Kickstarter campaign that they were using AI art for the production. And that's a Kickstarter thing. Kickstarter requires it now.
Kickstarter's pretty good about stuff like that because, I'm sorry, you broke up for a second.
No,
I thought you were
done.
Go ahead.
No, go. You go.
I was gonna say Farms Race. I think that was in Discord as well. So it's this game about it's Farms, but it's like an arms race. They had a parody of a Stonemaier Wingspan card, and at Jamie's request, Kickstarter had it taken down. So they're good about stuff like that.
They are good about that, and so I mean, like I said, kudos for them for having it. And I think that's the big thing is like as long as companies are upfront about it, then people can make an informed decision as a consumer, right? Like I'm not going to buy it because I'm not going to support AI art unless I know that the artists behind the original photos that were used to create the AI art are getting compensated because I'm a stickler for that stuff. I'm married to a woman who's a theater person. We have a bunch of friends that are artists and painters and those kind of things. So I don't mind paying $10 or $15 more for a game that I know that they produced the art for because it was, I'm a big supporter of the arts, right? We donate to the local art theaters and things like that. So, but I do think that even just beyond board games, I mean, this is a huge conversation that has to happen nationally and globally as far as what is the fair use of AI generative art, AI generative writing, so it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the courts with the lawsuit for the writers that are suing ChatGPT and other things on that. And that artists are going to do it similar, sometime soon. And I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens between American courts and the EU courts, because we know that the EU courts are much more, for lack of a better political term, much more liberal when it comes to art and artists and sort of rights of that. Whereas American courts tend to be a little bit more capitalistic, a little bit more towards the business side of things. So I'm really interested to see what happens sort of on the world level of where American courts start adjudicating this and where European courts start adjudicating this. But I'm also really interested to see what happens with the Writers Guild and the Actors Guild, because we know that today they announced that they made an agreement. So there's going to be some...
Oh, they did? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
good.
They announced today that they tentatively have reached an agreement. So now it goes to the rest of the whole guild to ratify the contract. So at least if we know if the writers are saying this is good, let's put it out to the membership for vote. It's going to have some stuff about AI in there. So I'll be really interested to see what happens there, because I think that'll be a big tell of where this goes as far as a entertainment medium. So
Tangential, but I'm glad that I literally just saw today that it said that there's supposed to be a spin-off or a rework of The Office after the strike ends. So that makes me really excited.
yeah, so that too today.
But while you're talking about courts and stuff, this is a little bit off topic, but also just while we're on the topic, stuff like the use of people's voices, which we had mentioned before, and likenesses, like deepfake and stuff like that, that can be incredibly dangerous as well. And I don't know what kind of legislation has or hasn't occurred with that, but that as well.
Yeah. Given the current, and then not to be political, but just in general, regardless of political affiliation, the current state of our government and its ability to pass any kind of new legislation, and the fact that the average age of congressmen and senators is somewhere north of 170, I don't even think they understand it. And I can say this having been to Capitol Hill and as part of my job, having spoken to some congressmen and senators over the last 10 or 15 years, is like, they don't get technology at all, and that's a problem. And I think that's.
Did you see the TikTok hearings whenever they were asking? It was so funny. Like,
yeah, you could just tell that they have no
idea.
clue. And you could see, like, anytime there's a Capitol Hill hearing on any kind of technology, you can see them asking questions. You can see like their aides that are all in their 20s sitting behind them, and they're just shaking their head like, "Oh my God, does this guy really not understand? I've explained this a million times. What LOL means, whatever." But yeah, I don't. It's going to be interesting, but I think, I'll be the devil's advocate with any new technology. There's always a Luddite reaction to we're not, I don't want this technology, whatever. And so I'm very open to it. I've used AI in my work already. I can't wait to get my hand on Microsoft's Copilot for its database usage, and I've used ChatGPT to write SQL code for my work, and things like that. So. There are very powerful, useful tools for AI, and I think they are very useful. I think it's going to help artists, right? I think artists can use AI to say, "Here's my paintings, do something with it," right? So I think even artists will eventually adopt to using various versions of AI to help them with their work. Just like 10 or 15 years ago, when you go to Dragon Con, back to thing, they have a huge art show. I mean, it's massive, and there are some amazing artists. And 10 or 15 years ago, it was all hand painted stuff. And now you've 5 or 10 years over the last 5 or 10 years, you've seen more and more stuff go from hand painted to this has been I painted this on Adobe Illustrator, or I've done it on my tablet, and then it's prints, right? And then you've seen art on metal and things like that. And like this year, they said no AI art allowed in the art show, but I could see that change. Yeah, they banned it right out from the heartbeat. But I could see over the next 5-10 years that changes too, because originally when the paintings in like Adobe Illustrator and using digital tools for paintings, there was a pushback for that too. I remember 10 or 15 years ago where people were like, "Oh no, it's got to be on canvas," right? So as the technology advances and adopts, and we're very alpha of the technologies, it'll get better. It'll get people to understand it better in its usage. My only fear of that is, and I'm a very tech guy, is again, I want the artists and the people behind the work that's helping to develop this get their pay, right? You have these, Microsoft and Google, and they've put billions into this AI technology. Well, the artists, the people that wrote those books and the people that wrote those, things, there should be something, even if it's like piddlings, but some sort of royalty for their art being used to train these AIs. And I think that's the crux of where the authors are coming from, is they're suing ChatGPT saying you've used our works to train your AI without any compensation. And so that's an interesting take.
So I think, I mean, if you look at history, technology, if anything, is going to get more prevalent rather than the opposite. I don't think this is going anywhere. I just think, we need to get some regulation. I mean, really, when you think about it, I mean, Google or Wikipedia, they're doing similar things in conglomerating other information, but this is a lot more, I guess, invasive and all-encompassing. But at the end of the day, if I think about my job and if there was a piece of technology that could make me potentially lose my job, I wouldn't be happy about it either.
Yeah.
And so even though, I don't think that this directly affects me because I'm not a visual artist, of course I empathize with those people I care about that do. At the same time, I know I'm not the most qualified person to speak on this. So people out there who are, people like Kyle, Mr. Jeeves, anybody else
who is an artist, photographer,
Yeah, exactly. So, like, if we're misspeaking on this, please correct us and continue giving us your 2 cents as well.
And it's not just art. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I can say this. In my job, I've had meetings already with, like, my boss and the president and stuff saying, like, hey, you know what? Probably in the next 5 years, I can downsize my staff from 10 to 5 because if the technology, if what we're seeing from Google Bard and Copilot and these others give us the efficiencies, I don't need 10 people doing this job anymore. I only need 5. I might not even need 5, right? I could probably do like it was. So this is gonna, but that's the thing is when the last horse buggy whip guy, making that, that old analogy, that guy got retrained and got a new job. Yep. Every time a job is eliminated, a new job is created. Right, it's just the history of the world. It's always happened. We're going to find new jobs, and we're always going to find new ways to innovate and do things. So, but it's just a question of how we're going to do it, right? So it's a good conversation, and I think as far as board games, like I have no problem with board games using AI art, as long as they're very upfront that they're doing it, but then to me, the flip side of that is if a board game company came around and said, hey, we're not using AI artists. And we're paying these artists, we're paying real human artists to do the art. All the art is hand-drawn or hand-painted or whatever. And so this game's $5 more or $10 more. I'm okay with that. Like, I understand that some people aren't. Some people want cheaper games, and I get that. I'm not going to argue against that.
But honestly, I think it would significantly increase. I was listening to an interview, I think, with Andrew Bosley, did the art like for Everdell and stuff. I mean, think about how many cards are in Everdell, and he had to paint every single one of those,
Yeah.
And so, not that I'm excusing it, but I can see the allure of not having to pay someone to make 230 illustrations, for one game.
Yeah, I get it.
So it's like I think it's about finding some kind of middle ground, like you're saying, where if you're going to do it, there needs to be compensation and credit where credit is due given.
Yeah. I think the big thing is like right now I don't think you can use. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't know if you could get AI generative art to be as good as Everdell. To be as good as Rococo, to be as good
at
as
this time, I agree.
The
but
Enel
10,
tool,
15 down,
that's what I'm saying. Like
years down the
not
road.
even that. Like 5 years from now, 2 years from now, there's going to be a point in the next few years where that is going to be as good as Enel Tool's art, as good as Andrew Bosley, as good as that. And once it hits that point, that's going to be a crux. And so
that's
I would
why
hope that we
need
figure
to
it
have
out
these discussions now. Yeah, exactly.
Which it doesn't happen, right? It's not going to happen, right? But it'll happen on podcasts like this that 5 people listen to, but it will not happen in the
we're
Hall of
going to be the
Congress.
change.
Be the change you want to be. But I think it's a great conversation, and I love the fact that it's happening. Like I've heard it on a couple of the podcasts. It's happened organically in our Discord server. People are thinking about it, and I think it does speak to the gamers in general. Is that it's not all about just give me a cheap good game. I think a lot of gamers recognize, especially with production value. Terraforming Mars is as good as it is not because of its art, because it's just a good game, right? But like think about it. If you took Terraforming Mars and did the production value of any Stonemaier game or Everdell or Rococo or Root or whatever, I mean it wouldn't make the game any better, but I think it would certainly maybe enhance it enough where it moved up even higher in people's minds.
Not on the art on the cards, but on the component quality. I know that like they made the big box with the 3D tiles and stuff, and people paid a lot of money for that.
Yeah.
But you were mentioning a while ago, I think the great thing about the board gaming community, and that I'm so proud to be a part of it, is I feel like not everybody, but the majority of people on this topic are gonna jump up to defend the artist. At least what I've seen, definitely in our community and in the wider community, and they're saying, I guess. Parenthetically, that hey, I'd rather pay a little bit more than to have these people go, be trodden upon.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and how much is it at? It doesn't mean because, I've listened, Jamie has done some stuff where he talks about paying artists and how much they get paid. And I've seen, and Ludology has had some podcasts over the years about artists and how much they get paid per piece. And it's not a tremendous amount, and it's a one-time fee, to do it. I just think it, I don't think we support the arts enough in this country, at least, or at least in certain parts of the country. So, anything, I always say, like, I'm not an artistic person at all. I'm a stick figure guy. So I'll gladly pay an extra $5 to see a beautiful piece of music or an orchestra or go to an art exhibit that, whatever it costs, because the art of society, I think, is a great thing, and we have to encourage that, because you can't all just be bean counters sitting in an office space, drabbed in gray. We need art, and we need, music and theater and things like that. So, I'll gladly pay an extra $5 if the game has human drawn art. So,
yep. Well, this was a good discussion. I'm glad we had it. I think that kind of wraps it up. Of course, in the Discord, please chime in. I know the discussion is already ongoing. We're hoping to supplement that a little bit and continue sparking it along. You want to go ahead and plug the call-in show for this week?
Yeah, so, this every Thursday night, 9 to 11 p.m., board game call-in show, Beans and Dice live. Please call in, give us your topic, give us your questions. There's been some great calls the last few weeks with some new games that we went out and bought and loved, and maybe hopefully Kyle hears this podcast and calls in and tells us what we got wrong on AI art, and so it's really good. Hopefully share it with your friends, other gamers. The more you talk about it, the more people listen. The more calls we get, the more entertaining it is, because it's always great to get new callers and just hear different opinions on stuff. So it's cool.
As usual, I'll give my shameless plug. 2.5 weeks from our local Southern Louisiana Con, Southern Board Game Fest, southerngamefest.com. I know there's a crew from the Tampa area coming on out. Love to see some more of you guys if you can make it out to Lafayette, Louisiana, October 14th and 15th. But until next time, happy gaming. I'm Mitchell.
And I'm Wayne.
And this is the Beans and Dice Podcast, a podcast about
how we game.
Take it easy, folks.
Have a good one.
Thanks for watching the Beans and Dice Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe.